Hello everyone, my name is Bonnie and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be going through all of the books I read in January, which was a mass amount of books. I am honestly shocked that I read so many. January felt so busy, but somehow I managed to read 17 books. I think that's the most I've ever read in any month in my entirety of being a reader. Like, what? Which this mass of reading was definitely like encouraged by my participation in the Be Sure-a-thon hosted by Sasha and the TBRPG-a-thon hosted by Ro, so props to them for their super engaging and fun readathons. I was participating in reading sprints, fulfilling prompts, all that. I'll try and keep it short and sweet since, like I said, 17 books. Craziness. But I will pull up Goodreads on my phone and scroll through there and share as I read, since some of these I read as ebooks or audiobooks, so I don't have a physical copy to show. But just so I don't forget anything, I'll go through it that way. So the first book I have to discuss that I read, and for those of you who watched my January TBR, you know this to be the what I was quite hype about, and that is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. This is, I believe it's supposed to be a YA. I'm not really sure what target audience it was for this, but this is the Illumicrate edition of it. This follows the story of Vanya, who is a jewel thief, but she's also the goddaughter of the goddesses Death and Fortune, so she has the power dynamic between those two that they're expecting her to choose between the two of who she would want to be the servant of, and Vanya does not want to be a servant to either of them or to anyone. She's also has the stolen identity of this princess named Giselle, who is like her former mistress or like companion. I don't know. She was the servant girl and they were both like the same age in their younger years. So it's like there's that dynamic of now she has stolen her identity with these magic pearls. So like thievery is taking place both with jewels and wealth, but also identity. So she's all about stealing from all these rich nobles and hoping to save up money to then escape the city. But when one of her thievery moments goes awry, she ends up getting cursed to then, you know, pretty much become these precious gems that she's been stealing. So like rubies start to grow on her skin, and then by the full moon she is doomed to die. Her thievery has gotten noticed by some of these prefects that are essentially like investigators of certain crimes, so then we get some characters that way. There's just a lot of characters, a lot of things going on. I feel like I was misled about this book because I thought we were gonna like go on heists or see more heists, and we really only get like one heist-ish. Like we see like the tail end of a heist at the beginning, but I thought we were gonna have some epic heist moments, and this is not so much. This is like, I would say the closest we get is like sleight of hand, or I don't know, just con artistry of Vanya keeping up her act as the princess. This is also a Goose Girl retelling, which I believe is a German fairy tale, so this definitely takes root in that quite a bit. There is numerous words and terms. I think they are German. I'm not, don't quote me on that, but they are like strewn throughout this. There is like a little bit of a glossary at the end of this, but the glossary is missing so many terms that I was like trying to look into. So I was like, why is this glossary even here if it doesn't include everything that is questionable of what this term means or anything like that? So like that kind of annoyed me. And then there's just a whole bunch of characters and names and like even nobility reference that I'm like, who is this again? This was not the epic grand heist ragtag crew I was expecting from it, which could in part be on me that I might have like latched on to the word heist a little too hard in the synopsis, but it was still fun. But it just wasn't the love I thought it would be. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. The next book Goodreads has listed for me to talk about is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I listened to this on audiobook from my library. This month I was really wanting to try out Lucy Foley's work since I know she is coming out with a new mystery thriller in February, I believe end of February. So I wanted to try her out, and I know Guest List is like her top #1 book that she's particularly known for, so I got my hands on that. It was an intriguing time. Guest List is like a mystery occurs with this wedding party on this secluded island, so it's like their wedding is taking place on this island and there's like storms coming in and all that, and of course everyone's got their own shady past. There's a lot going on, everyone's got shady stuff going on, bad past, and pretty much the majority of the male characters all went to that posh boarding school, and it sounds like they got into some shady and dangerous things at the boarding school, you know, boys being boys, that sort of thing, and it sounds like everyone's past is coming back to haunt them and things just continue to escalate. What I enjoyed in this story was how we learned this story jumping around the timeline, so we get the perspectives of quite a few of the characters before the wedding and then the day of the wedding, and then we also jump in between that with like the day after the wedding or the night of the wedding, where like shit has gone down, there's power outages, there's people missing, there's like random possessions being found that makes you think they like fell into a bog in this island. You're seeing this story unwind of like, okay, who is loyal to who, like what tensions are between which characters, and then also you have to be like, okay, who is the murderer, who is the victim, what went on, what caused this, that sort of thing. So it's an intriguing story. I like how it unfolded. I do think Lucy Foley has definitely a skill to draw the reader in, because I definitely was like captivated. I wanted to know what happened, but then there's also like characters that you don't care about. You just don't care. You don't care. You just want to know. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. I definitely think the audiobook is worth a listen if you are interested. I don't know, I just thought the crafting of it and the writing of it is worthy of a 3-star, which, you know, for me 3-star is still a good rating. It's like average, nothing blew my mind, but like still enjoyable. There's still something like of value here. I think other people will enjoy it, that sort of things. The next book I have to share I also listened to on audiobook, and that is The Inadequate Heir by Danielle L. Jensen. This is the 3rd installment of the Bridge Kingdom fantasy series, which Danielle L. Jensen is kind of breaking the series up into duologies. So the first 2 books, The Bridge Kingdom and The Traitor Queen, follow Laura and Aaron and their love story that is very enemies to lovers over a marriage treaty, and Laura is actually sent to kill Aaron and have her kingdom overpower his, but then, you know, they eventually fall in love. And I love the first 2. I think the first 2 are great. So I was excited to get my hands on The Inadequate Heir, which follows Laura's brother Karis and a different heir to a different kingdom. Her name is Zara, and I was intrigued by it. We do see those characters and like their dynamics in the first 2 books, so I was like, okay, I'm hype. I already like these characters. Let's get more of these Bridge Kingdom books. I was so disappointed by this book. Literally, what was the point of this book? This book should have been a novella. This book was so long for no reason. So much of the plot we already know about. Pretty much the entirety of the story is coinciding with the plot of Traitor Queen. So we already know the big stake shit that's going down. We already know who's gonna get caught, who's gonna escape, who's gonna live, who's gonna die. We already know. We already know. So like, none of the stakes were not real for this. I just feel like so much of my time was wasted in this. We barely got any new content. Let me see how many pages it is, because I remember I kept being like, how is this audiobook not over yet? How am I not halfway through this yet? Like, Goodreads says the hardcover and paperback editions, which haven't come out yet, they're coming in May, are 558 pages of nothing. It's of nothing. Also, this book was supposed to be, you know, the love dynamic tensions between Karis and Zara, but it felt so insta-love. They kept being so focused on like their attraction and everything. I'm like, bro, what, you're telling me this, but I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. I'm not seeing it. Like, I just don't get it. Also, the way Zara is literally conveyed in this book, she did not feel like this badass general of this army. She felt like some random ass soldier that no one cared about. This book was an absolute flop. I will still check out the next book because I'm hoping it will actually have a new plot with new consequences and new situations. But this book was a 2-star. And I was shocked by it. Makes me scared now to pick up other Danielle L. Jensen. The next ones I have to share is Sailor Moon Eternal Edition Volume 5, Volume 6, and Volume 7. I went off. I said, these readathons going on, we're reading all the Sailor Moon I have my hands on. And overall, it was a pretty good time. I will say Volume 5 is my absolute favorite so far. I absolutely adored this edition. We finally get to meet all of the Sailor Guardians. So like, it's always super exciting when we like get introduced to a new baddie. So I super loved that. And I don't know, I think like the character dynamics were super intriguing, and like I was gasping at times. I was chuckling at times. This volume was fire. I loved it. We had like fun moments with the evil entities of this one, because it's like this mysterious private school that's got like shady shit going on. So like, that's intriguing. New characters are intriguing. Fun interactions are happening. I loved it. Then Volume 6 happened, and this was a flop. I think I gave it 3 stars. Just, I felt like nothing happened. Everything felt so repetitive and just and I hated the stories we had with Chibiusa and Luna. It made me uncomfortable. It was very like fat phobic and implying that women are only beautiful with makeup. It was just very strange, because usually in like Sailor Moon they then would challenge that belief, but they did not do that in this Chibiusa story. I was like, what the heck's going on? And then the Luna side story, I was like, who are these random ass people? I do not care. Do not bring these random nobodies into stories when I'm literally 6 volumes in. All of these are like 400 or 500 pages. I'm like, don't bring these random nobodies into these stories. I don't care. I don't care. So this one was a shocking letdown. Volume 7, I was content with. Volume 7 was definitely an improvement off of Volume 6. I feel like we're progressing the story again and seeing more character development. And then this one was just enjoyable with, like, you know, each of our main Sailor Guardians getting kind of their own moment to shine, very much like how they did at the beginning when we first were introduced to them in the earlier volumes. So like, it was like a nice little refresher. So this one was a 4-star. Next one I have to discuss is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. Finally got to this one. Definitely have had it sticking around for quite a few years now, so happy I've got into it. Unfortunately, it was just a 3-star for me. It felt incredibly mediocre. I felt like I was never completely sucked in at any point, and I just really wished we had gotten dual perspective between our main character Elizabeth, the character we do get the perspective from, and I just really desperately wanted the perspective of Nathaniel Thorn, because I loved him. I'm a basic bitch and I loved him. Literally everyone I know like raves about him in this story. Like, he is the most interesting character. He's the one that has all the sorcery and also like witty banter moments and everything. Like, he is super intriguing, but Elizabeth fell kind of flat for me. So I feel like if we had gotten his perspective, like, we could have gotten a new insight on her, and maybe I would have then like seen what the intrigue is about her. Essentially, this story is set in this magical world where there is sorcery and magical books, and these magical books are located in specific libraries and kind of protected and warded off, because like these grimoires are like essentially alive and will attack you, become evil in some way or agitated in certain ways, mistreated, etc., etc. So plots begin to happen when these libraries are starting to get targeted, and Elizabeth is training to be a warden of these libraries. She's grown up in these libraries ever since she was small, so she has like certain attachments to these books. She also is left like a sword from a previous librarian, so like that's cool, I guess. Then the plot of these like grimoires acting up and libraries getting attacked then somehow leads Elizabeth into Nathaniel Thorn, who is a very experienced and well-known sorcerer. So they end up working together, and eventually they have their relationship strengthens and that sort of stuff, but like I just didn't get it. I just didn't get it. The next one I have to discuss is another Lucy Foley book I also got my hands on through my library, The Hunting Party, which I believe she wrote first before the guest list, which I enjoyed the guest list quite a bit more than The Hunting Party. Hunting Party I only gave 2 stars. It is the story of this group of old school friends who all agree to go to this hunting lodge in this isolated setting, like, you know, low cell reception, middle of nowhere, and it's like deep winter in Scotland around New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. So like once again there is like play with the timeline of before the New Year's party and then after. And you know, of course everyone's got a secret going on, secret connections, tensions, that sort of thing. But this book, like, I just didn't get it. Like, I noticed a lot of people were also saying this on Goodreads, but it's like, how are any of these people friends? Or like, maybe they were friends back in school, but I don't believe they would still be in contact to this day. Like, they all seem to hate each other, and I'm like, if you hated all these people, you would not agree to travel a distance to be in an isolated setting with like very little internet or other entertainment or other people. Like, you would not do that. You could not catch me doing that. So that was like, definitely pulled me out of the story. And then also there was so many characters we are introduced to, but they were completely irrelevant to any of the stories. Like, I wouldn't even consider them like red herrings, because like we never saw them for them to be suspicious characters. So things do get crazy, of course. And like I was saying with the guest list, I do believe Lucy Foley does have a skill of drawing the reader in and wanting to know what happens, because, you know, even though I was very annoyed with the characters and how like so many things just didn't matter, I was still like wanting to know how things went, what plot twists were going to occur, that sort of thing. So still has value. I don't see myself recommending this one unless you wanted to kind of see and compare Lucy Foley's like progress between her books. For me, I feel like she's on an upswing, with Hunting Party being a 2, and I believe that one was her oldest book, and then A Guest List being 3. I'm like, okay, maybe Paris Apartments, when that comes out in February, maybe that one will potentially be a 4-star. We'll see. I have hope, and that's what matters. The next book I have to discuss is, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to talk about it. And that is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir. I loved this so much more than I ever could have expected. This was 5 out of 5 stars, of course. I was enthralled. I loved it. It's literally my favorite book of the year so far, which, you know, still plenty of months ahead, but I just keep thinking about it. And when I think about it, I get all teary-eyed, and I just love it so much. So let me backtrack before I get emotional. So Gideon the Ninth is this sci-fi fantasy that is about these different houses that all have necromancer powers and, you know, different political expectations, that sort of thing. But Gideon and Harrow are of the 9th house, which is pretty much a like bare bones house. Like, they don't have a lot of money, they don't have a lot of prestige left, like they're just the bottom of the barrel of the houses pretty much. So we have Gideon, who was pretty much kind of like a foundling. She isn't from the 9th house, but when she was a baby she was orphaned there, so she kind of grows up within the 9th house kind of as like a servant. And then there is Harrow, who is like the heir to the 9th house, and she is the necromancer of this story. And Harrow and Gideon have grown up together because they're essentially the only two remaining 2 or 3 remaining characters of the ninth house of the same age. So, you know, they're stuck together for literally their entire lives. So, you know, they got the dynamic of like, I freaking hate you, you suck, they beat each other up, that sort of thing. But they're, you know, constantly forced to be around each other and work together. And that escalates even further when they have to go to this different venue setting that's like, I think in space. I think they go into space. And all of the houses are invited to it because they are proving their worth, because they want to essentially like level up to be these godlike entities for their overall emperor kind of thing. So Gideon becomes kind of the defender of Harrow. Like, all of the necromancers have like a paired bodyguard with them, and Gideon has been training with a longsword for quite a few years, so she's kind of the only worthy swordsman left. So they get paired up together. Gideon gets more independence, but then she's still like stuck with Harrow, so it's kind of like But, you know, things get challenged, both with, at this venue, Harrow has to prove her necromancy skills with different tests in this kind of like underground labyrinth thing that's very eerie, and Gideon has to kind of learn what's expected of her, like even like changing up what weapon she uses, because as this bodyguard cavalier, she has to learn how to fight with a rapier rather than her favored longsword. So it's challenging skills for both Gideon and Harrow, and then people start getting murdered. So Gideon and Harrow have to work together, both to succeed in these trials, for Harrow to become kind of like this elevated entity, but also being like, who the heck is doing this killing? What the heck is going on? And also, this book is very sapphic. Not like sweeping romance wise, just like these characters are into women, and they're just like, and Gideon is just like, that's a beautiful woman over there. Oh, look at her beautiful hair, her beautiful curves, her badassery, like that sort of thing. And it's just so refreshing. You love to see it. So, you know, there's badassery, there is sword fighting, there is crazy cool necromancy, there's like gory creepy bits, and to top it all off, somehow this book made me cry like 3 different times. There are soft moments that like just gets me, and this ending goes batshit. It goes batshit. Literally, like the last 10 pages, I believe, I was just crying the whole time. And that never happens for me. Usually, like, if I'm crying at a book, it's like 1 tear, and then I move on, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I cried. But this book, there is no doubt I was crying at this shit. Holy cow. Just, oh my god. Just Gideon and Harrow, I love their dynamic of like forced friendship, but then it's like, oh wait, we actually are friends. And just, I love it. I love it. The next books I have to share is actually a complete trilogy that I read in January, and that is the Captive Prince trilogy with the Captive Prince, Prince's Gambit, and King's Rising. Captive Prince opens up this kind of political fantasy-esque world of these warring kingdoms, and our main 2 characters are the crown princes of these warring kingdoms, but Damon, who we get the primary perspective from throughout, we really only get glimpses of other perspectives, but Damon is overthrown and kind of shunned, outcast, smuggled into slavery into their warring kingdom, and becomes the pleasure slave of Prince Laurent. So then Damon has to kind of try and fit in with their expectations, but also he wants to hide his identity because he's, I mean, bad things already are happening just being a slave, but he's concerned of what other monstrosities could occur if they discover he is the rightful heir to their rival kingdom. So this book, the perks of this book is that it's very intriguing how the politics are handled and just how the characters try to operate in this political situation. This book is, I think, the least well done. I gave it 3 stars. I had just a lot of issue with all of the tough topics that this focuses on. This includes sexual assault, whipping, branding, flogging, references to pedophilia, just a whole bunch of shitty topics and situations, and like quite a bit of this, it just feels like we're just witnessing it. It's like, what is the plot? What are we moving towards? Why are we just witnessing this? Like, why isn't this getting challenged? That sort of thing. So I had an issue with that. And then this book, even though it's marked a romance, there really isn't a romance in this first book. It's definitely more just seeing how fucked up this world is. The characters are interesting, so like I wanted to know what they were about, what the situation would be. Then Princess Gambit is already an improvement of kind of getting away from witnessing the amount of monstrosities, but there's some shitty stuff that also happens in this. Trigger warnings for suicide. But it does start to develop the romantic relationship, camaraderie between Damon and Laurent, and kind of revealing their power dynamics being more equal, seeing value in each other, that sort of thing. So an improvement. And then King's Rising, we see a lot more political things getting resolved, soft moments, romantic moments, proving of loyalty. So all of these ended up being 3 stars. Still just quick reads, interesting, although like I couldn't give any of them 4 stars because I'm like, I feel like none of these topics are challenged enough. I feel like we aren't getting proof of like these horrible things getting like banned. So just 3 stars. My battery died, so apologies if there is any lighting or position changing. I've tried my best to reset it up the way it previously was, but we have more books to discuss. The next book I have to discuss is Where the Drowned Girls Go by Seanan McGuire. This is the latest installment in the Wayward Children novella series, and it is kind of a continuation of some of the books that are set kind of in like our world, where like the magical children come back to our world when their doors have like cast them out, or they've left their worlds for whatever reason, and you know, they're kind of feeling rather lost, trying to re-assimilate into our normal everyday life. So they find themselves part of the Eleanor West Children's Home. But in Where the Drowned Girls Go, we learn that there is another school as well that is kind of darker, more serious, like really leached of whimsy, wonder that Eleanor tries to provide for her children. And so our character Cora, who we have met and kind of traveled with in previous installments, is wanting to go elsewhere in the hopes that it will help her cope with with her experiences she's had in the various worlds she has since traveled to. Cora is an exciting character to follow because in her world she was a mermaid. So now back in our world she although she isn't a mermaid anymore, she is like still drawn to the water. Her skin has like an iridescent sheen to it, and I believe she has like teal hair or something. So all cool things, but she decides to leave Eleanor West home and all her friends to go to the Whitethorn Academy, and things do not go the way she hopes. It's quite eerie there, off-settling. Literally at that school, everything they do is just the exact opposite of what the children found so perfect about their world. So like if your world was like super whimsical, nonsensical, then at Whitethorn you don't get any of those good things. It is all like the exact opposite. So like you'd be very structured, very like forced into logic situations. Like they even come down to what diets they allow their students to have, so it's very restrictive. And then Cora, along with some other familiar faces from previous installments, starts to uncover kind of nefarious goings on at the school. And so there's like history and resolving issues, coming to terms with things. And yeah, just like a lot happens in just a few amount of pages. I really enjoyed it. I was definitely captivated, and I gave it 4 stars, although there were a few moments that did give me 5-star feels, so we'll see if I reread it, if that'll change. But currently it's sitting at a 4-star, and it was just really cool, really captivating. I just love how Seanan McGuire world builds both the Portal Fantasy aspects of the series and then the kind of more normal everyday world as well. The next book I have to share is Obsidio by Amie Kaufman and Kristoff. This is the 3rd and final installment of the Illuminae Files, which is a young adult sci-fi series, mixed media story that has case files, video notes, things redacted from files, or so all sorts of interesting text for you to look at. And it is a retelling of this kind of space struggle. There is like this kind of crazy AI that's like, do we trust him? He's deadly, that sort of thing. There's evil corporations, there's invasions, there's battles. Like, so much happens in this series. This being the 3rd installment, it definitely feels more of a sequel to Illuminae and Gemina. We have familiar characters from the first 2 books, as well as some new faces, and you know, things finally come to a breaking point, things are revealed. And in the Illuminae Files that like we see referenced at the beginning of each book is then wrapped up as well, so we get to see the stakes and the devastation and that sort of thing. So theory-wise, this book is great, but when I was reading it, I just couldn't stop noticing the similarities this has to the other 2 books. Just these 3 books feel very formulaic with all of the character relationships. Like, each book has a guy and a girl who were previously in love, but they broke up for whatever reason, but then they found themselves in this space situation and they reunite. And it's like very similar snarky banter and everything, so it's like, does it really matter which pairing of characters is in this situation or are conversing? Not really. This one I also had the issue with how much we were jumping back and forth of stories. So we have like our familiar characters from book 1 and 2 in space, and then we have our 2 new characters, Asha and Reese, on a planet. So we only get little moments of Asha and Reese's situation, and then we'll jump back to the characters we already know about. So I feel like we never got to really get invested in Asha and Reese's story and struggle. Like, yeah, bad stuff was happening to them, but I didn't really care because I'm like, I never developed an attachment to them because we were always jumping back to the characters we already know. This was a 3-star read for me, although I still think the audiobooks for this series is absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed listening to the audiobook while physically reading all of these books, so if you have access to that, I really encourage you to do so that way, because it's narrated super well with multiple voice actors. They even do like space noises, computer noises, like little background things at times. Like, although I didn't love how this series ended, I do really like the concept still. Okay, we're starting to get close to the end of my reads. I did read American Prince by Simone. This is like a smutty romance book in I think it's a trilogy. It claims to be like a Camelot retelling, but I really don't see it in the second book. Barely in the first one anyway. It's just a smutty time. Also, like, problematic shit happens too. Like, it's just crazy. But like, Simone really knows how to write smut, so like, keep giving it a shot. But this book made me like really dislike one of the characters of the throuple. I was just like, boy, you were making bad decisions. This is a bad decision. And then he hurts his partners, and I'm like, you knew that was gonna happen. You saw that coming. What are you doing? So I don't have much to say. You know, at this point, just reading it for the smut. The plot is non-existent really, or just dumb, or just random drama shit that happens, so I'm not expecting much, and it's just 2-star. And then the final 2 books I have to share are the first 2 reads of January. Like, it still blows my mind I've read this many stories, and it's been that many books between the beginning of the year when I read these ones. But it is Soul Eater Volume 3 and Soul Eater Volume 4. Both of these are the perfect editions, the really nice hardcover editions. I won't explain what this series is about again, because I feel like I've summarized or attempted to summarize the plot of this anime and manga quite frequently in my recent videos, but I really enjoyed these. These volumes are the wrap of the first arc. So the first arc concludes in the 4th one, so I had to give this one 5 out of 5 stars. It was just great. Volume 3 was good. I gave it 4 stars, but you know, it's leading up to the conclusion, so like, good things were happening. I was intrigued by story, some backgrounds we were getting of characters. I enjoyed it, but had to give props to this one absolutely. I think I will be content where I am right now because they are still releasing the perfect editions. I believe 1 volume has just come out in January, but they're going to continue to release the volumes every few months, so I think I'm gonna wait and then get my hands on them as well, because I would hate to like leave off at a random spot when I can just wait for a little while and be content on having completed the first arc. These are all of the books as well as the ebook audiobooks that I managed to read in January. I can't get over this. This is crazy. This is crazy. But, you know, there was some flops, but I'm just very happy that I've had quite a few 5 stars already. I'm usually quite picky with my 5 stars, so to already have a 5-star in the Sailor Moon manga series, the Soul Eater manga series, and Gideon the Ninth is like totally amazing. It gets me super hyped for my reading year and what's to come next. That is all of the books I have to share today. I would love to know in the comments what you managed to read in January, how your reading plans are going for the year. In the description, I also have linked my Goodreads and bookstagram if you would like to follow or friend me on there. But other than that, I'm gonna head on out. So thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I hope to see you here for the next one. Bye.